It was a hazy evening in 1859. In a remote cotton field in Virginia, where white bolls clung to the earth like bones, a boy sat hidden. He was about 11 years old, his eyes deep and silent. He was watching, waiting for the procession to move toward the slave cemetery. Torches flickered in the cool evening breeze. 3 men were carrying a wooden box. The box
Look
was
at
made
that
of
sunset,
rough
honey.
planks,
Isn't
and
it
a corner of
beautiful?
cloth picked
Yeah,
out
Mom,
from
it's
it.
really pretty.
Just
Behind
like
them
you.
rode the white overseer, Mr. Perkins, on his horse, a leather-bound book in his hand. The overseer called out, "Stop." The procession halted. Perkins opened the book and wrote something with his pen. Then he announced in a loud voice, "Name, Sarah. Age, approximately 44 years. Cause of death, fever and weakness." The hidden boy heard this name and repeated it in his heart, Sarah. He had heard this name before. It was the name of a woman his mother's age who sometimes gave him water in the fields. There were no tears in his eyes, only a deep, dark layer of memory upon which
This
he
way,
would carve
to the
every name.
plants. Okay, let's go.
This boy
We're a
was
good
Caleb,
team. Yeah.
and this was the night when he began
You are
the
all to
greatest
listen
secret
carefully
of
to
his
the
life,
instructions.
writing down
There
the
will be
name
no
of every slave
deviation
who
from the
died
orders given.
secretly, in the darkness, on the tablet of his heart. But how was he to know that 30 years later, when all of this had crumbled to dust, there would be one name that appeared in every death record? And that name would be his own. Caleb was born in the spring of 1848, on the very plantation where he now sat hidden. His mother's name was Delia, a strong woman with a bent back but fire in her eyes. His father, whose name was Jonah,
Look at that
was a
sunset,
tall,
honey. Isn't
silent
it
man
beautiful?
considered an expert
Yeah, Mom,
with
it's
horses.
really pretty.
Just like
They
you.
lived in a small hut made of piled bricks and mud. Caleb's first memory was a ray of sunlight streaming through a crack in the hut's roof. He would watch the dust motes dancing in that ray and laugh. His mother would see him and smile, saying, "You are a son of the sun, Caleb." But even being a son of the sun could not save him when he was 3 years old. One morning, as mist lay over the cotton fields, the sound of horses' hoofs came. Mr. Thornton, the owner of this plantation, had brought a stranger with him. The stranger looked at Caleb's father, Jonah, felt his arms, and nodded. That night, Jonah said to Delia, "They are taking
This way, to the plants.
Tomorrow
Okay, let's
morning."
go. We're a good
Delia
team.
made
Yeah.
no sound. She just
You
sat
are all
there,
to listen
tears
carefully to
flowing
the
from her
instructions.
eyes,
There
holding
will be
Caleb
no
tight in her
deviation from
lap.
the orders given.
At dawn, Jonah was put in chains and loaded onto a cart. Caleb called out for his father, but Jonah did not look back. Perhaps because if he had looked back, his heart would have turned to stone. After that day, Delia never spoke Jonah's name again. But Caleb kept his name enshrined in his heart. And whenever a slave died, he would wonder if his father had also died somewhere. From the age of 5,
Look at
Caleb
that
had to
sunset,
start
honey. Isn't
working
it
in the
beautiful?
fields.
Yeah, Mom, it's really
At first,
pretty.
he
Just
would
like
fetch
you.
and carry water, then he learned to remove seeds from cotton bolls. In summers, the sun would beat down so hard that the earth cracked, and in winters, the wind would blow so cold that bones shivered. Mr. Thornton was not a cruel master. He neither shouted nor rained down lashes. His cruelty was silent. He would ride through the fields on his horse at 7 in the morning, and in the evening, he would sit in his office doing accounts. In his eyes, slaves were just numbers. So many pounds of cotton, so many dollars. So many slaves died, so many new ones to buy. The overseer, Mr. Perkins, was his opposite.
This way, to the plants.
He
Okay,
was always
let's go.
ready to rain
We're a
down
good
lashes
team.
over the
Yeah.
smallest things. But he
You are
too
all
had
to
his
listen
ways.
carefully to the instructions.
He never
There will
beat
be
someone
no
when they were
deviation from the
already
orders
down.
given.
He would wait for them to get up, then strike. Caleb quickly learned that silence was the best protection. He didn't make noise like other children. He worked, he watched, and he remembered. He saw that Mr. Perkins wrote the name of every dead slave in his book. He saw that some names appeared again and again, like Sarah, or Tom, or Beth. But there was one name that never came.
Look at that
his father's
sunset,
name.
honey. Isn't it beautiful?
Caleb
Yeah,
thought,
Mom, it's
maybe
really
he is
pretty.
alive.
Just like you.
When Caleb turned 7, he developed a strange ability. He could remember every name he heard just once. Whether it was the name of a slave, a white person, or a horse. One day, Mr. Thornton's son, William, who was 12, came with his father. He was reading a book and read something aloud. Caleb heard those words and repeated them in his heart. He didn't know it, but he was learning to read. One day, an old woman named Mama Rihanna saw him sitting at the edge of the field. He was drawing lines in the dirt with his finger. She asked, "What are you writing, child?" Caleb said,
This way,
"Nothing,
to the
just the
plants."
names
Okay,
Mr.
let's
Perkins
go.
called out
We're a
this
good
morning."
team, yeah.
Mama Rihanna came closer and
You are
looked.
all to listen carefully to the
There were
instructions.
lines in the dirt,
There will be no
resembling some
deviation from
letters.
the orders given.
She was astonished. She knew that reading and writing were forbidden for slaves. She grabbed Caleb's hand and wiped away the dirt, saying, "Don't tell anyone about this. It could be your death." But in his heart, Caleb thought that if he could write names, maybe someday he could also find them. Maybe find his father. Caleb's mother Delia was a strong woman, but with time, her back bent further. At night, she would tell Caleb stories of Africa, where her mother's mother had lived. Those stories took root in Caleb's heart. He understood that being a slave was not their destiny, it was just a sickness that had infected white people. When Caleb was 9, a sister was born to him. They named her Leah. Delia said, "She is light, in the darkness." But darkness resented the light. 6 months later, Leah died of fever. Delia wrapped her in cloth and buried her in the cemetery herself. Mr. Perkins wrote in his book, "Leah, age 6 months, cause of death, fever." That night, Caleb saw his mother cry for the first time. She didn't lie on the bed, but sat leaning against the wall, eyes closed, making a soft, low sound. Caleb went to her and placed his hand on her head. Delia grasped his hand and said, "Remember, Caleb, we are not dirt. We are spirits."
Look at that
In the summer
sunset,
of
honey. Isn't it
1856,
beautiful?
a rumor
Yeah, Mom,
spread
it's
that
really
slaves on a
pretty.
neighboring
Just like you.
plantation had planned a rebellion. Mr. Thornton counted his slaves and posted armed guards at night. One night, a young slave named Sam was caught trying to escape toward the fields. In the morning, all the slaves were gathered in the middle of the field. Mr. Thornton himself came, holding not a whip but a cane. He looked at Sam silently, then said, "You know that running away is a crime. You know what the punishment is." Sam's knees were trembling. He said, "Mr. Thornton, I was just going to see my wife, she's on the other plantation." Mr. Thornton nodded, as if he understood. Then he looked at Perkins and said,
This way,
50
to the
lashes,
plants.
then
Okay,
sell
let's
him."
go. We're a good
Sam
team,
was
yeah.
tied to a post. Perkins
You are all
rained
to
down
listen
the
carefully
whip.
to the instructions.
For the first
There will be
15
no
lashes,
deviation from the
Sam
orders
kept
given.
screaming, then he fell silent. After the 50th lash, blood was running down his back and he was unconscious. Caleb saw all of this. He saw Mr. Thornton twirl his cane, mount his horse, and ride back. There was no emotion on his face, no anger, no sorrow. Just emptiness. Sam was auctioned the next day. Caleb wrote his name in his heart. Sam, Mama Rihanna
Look at
was
that
the oldest
sunset,
woman on
honey.
the
Isn't it
plantation.
beautiful?
Yeah, Mom, it's
No
really
one
pretty.
knew how old
Just
she
like
was.
you.
She said she had come from Africa, and she remembered what the ocean looked like. She treated illnesses with herbs, and people came to her when they were sick. Caleb felt a connection to her. She would tell him stories, and teach him which root was good for what. One day Caleb asked her, "Mama, did you ever write down your parents' names?" She laughed. "Write? Child, I don't know how to write. I just remember." "How do you remember?" "With the heart. When you love someone, their name gets carved into your heart. And when they die, the name doesn't fade, it just
This
grows
way,
deeper."
to the plants. Okay, let's
Caleb
go.
thought about how
We're a
many
good
names
team,
were in
yeah.
his heart. His father's
You are
name,
all to listen
his
carefully
sister's
to the
name,
instructions.
Sam's name,
There will
and
be
now
no
Sarah's
deviation
name.
from the orders given.
He wanted these names to be preserved somewhere. One day, Caleb saw a broken pen in the trash heap outside Mr. Thornton's house. He hid it. Then he collected scraps of paper from old cloth. At night, he would sit hidden behind his hut, in the moonlight, and write names. At first just names, then the date, then the cause of death. He wrote everything that Perkins wrote in his book.
Look at that
He felt
sunset,
that this
honey.
was
Isn't
like
it
his mother
beautiful?
telling stories.
Yeah, Mom, it's really pretty.
He too
Just
was
like
telling
you.
stories, but these were stories of death. One night, Mama Rihanna saw him. She came silently and sat beside him. Caleb was scared, but he said, "Mama, I just want to remember." Mama Rihanna looked at the pen, then at the paper. She said, "This is dangerous, son." "I know. Still you do it." Still. Mama Hannah took a long breath. Then she placed her hand on Caleb's head and said, "Then all right. But remember, this pen could kill you." In 1858, a new overseer came to the plantation.
This way,
Perkins
to the
had been
plants.
sent
Okay,
elsewhere.
let's go. We're a
The
good
new
team.
overseer
Yeah.
was Mr. Garnett, who was harsher than
You
Perkins.
are all to listen carefully to the
He
instructions.
suspected that some
There will be
slaves
no
were
deviation
secretly
from the
learning
orders
to
given.
read and write. He started conducting sudden night raids. One night he came near Caleb's hut. Caleb saw him coming and quickly hid his paper and pen in an earthen pot. Garnett came in, looked around, found nothing. But his gaze fell on Caleb, and he grew suspicious. He said, "Why are you awake at night, boy?" Caleb said, "I feel cold, Mr. Garnett."
Look at that
Garnett
sunset,
stared
honey.
at
Isn't
him,
it beautiful?
then left.
Yeah, Mom, it's really
But after
pretty.
that night,
Just like
Caleb
you.
felt he was being watched. Caleb had a friend named Priscilla. She was his age and worked with him in the fields. They would often fetch water together and talk. Priscilla didn't know Caleb's secret, but she knew he was hiding something. One day she asked Caleb, "Where do you go at night?" Caleb lied, "Nowhere." Priscilla looked into his eyes and said, "Don't lie. I can help you." But Caleb was afraid. He said, "No help, Priscilla. Just you be quiet." Priscilla remained quiet, but the matter gnawed at her heart. One day, Mr. Garnett asked her what Caleb did at
This
night.
way, to the plants.
Priscilla
Okay, let's
said,
go.
"Nothing.
We're a
He's
good
just
team.
sleeping."
Yeah.
But there was hesitation in
You are
her
all
voice.
to listen carefully to the instructions.
Garnett sensed it.
There will
Point
be no
one night,
deviation from
Garnett
the orders
followed
given.
Caleb. Caleb was sitting in his spot, writing, when suddenly light appeared. Garnett stood there with a torch. "What are you writing, boy?" Caleb's heart stopped. He tried to hide the paper, but Garnett lunged and grabbed his hand. The papers fell. Garnett picked them up and looked at them in the torchlight. "These are names of the dead. Why are you writing these?" Caleb remained silent. Garnett slapped him. "Speak." Caleb said, "I don't know." Garnett dragged him before Mr. Thornton. In the morning, Mr. Thornton summoned Caleb. That same emptiness was on his face. He looked at the papers, then at Caleb. "You can read?" Caleb nodded. "Who taught you?" "No one. I taught myself." Mr. Thornton took a long breath. Then he looked at Garnett. "Sell him. Take him to the auction house tomorrow morning." That night, Caleb sat with his mother Delia. Delia embraced him, but her eyes were dry. She said, "Son, you were brave. You remembered those people. That is no sin." Caleb asked, "Mother, how will you survive?" Delia said, "I am already dead, son. When your father
Look at that
left,
sunset,
when
honey.
Leah
Isn't
went,
it beautiful?
I have been dead
Yeah,
since
Mom,
then.
it's really pretty.
Just
But
like
you
you.
are alive. Wherever you go, remember, your heart is with me." In the morning, Garnett came. Caleb was put in chains. As he left, he looked back and saw his mother standing outside the hut, holding a small bundle. She gave the bundle to Garnett and said, "There's bread in it. Let him eat it on the way." Tears streamed from Caleb's eyes. He wanted to scream, "Mother," but no sound came. He just kept watching, until his mother's face blurred into nothing. The auction house was a large wooden hall where slaves were sold like animals. Caleb was made to stand with others. White people
This way,
came and
to the
went,
plants.
looking at
Okay,
their
let's
bodies,
go.
checking
We're a
their
good
teeth,
team.
feeling
Yeah.
their arms. One man
You are all
looked
to
at
listen
Caleb
carefully
and
to the
asked, "What work
instructions.
does this boy
There
know?"
will be no deviation from
The
the orders
auctioneer
given.
said, "Field work, and they say he also knows reading and writing." The man looked surprised. "Reading and writing? That's dangerous. But he's smart at work." The man thought for a while, then bid. Caleb was handed over to this man. His name was Mr. Evans, and he took Caleb to South Carolina with him. Mr. Evans' plantation was worse than the old one.
Look at that sunset, honey. Isn't
Here,
it beautiful?
Along with cotton,
Yeah,
they
Mom,
also
it's really
grew
pretty.
rice, and
Just
the work
like
was
you.
harder. Caleb had to carry water in swampy land full of snakes and mosquitoes. The overseer here was Mr. Baker, who was never without his whip. But Caleb quickly learned that silence was survival. He worked, kept his mouth shut, and at night, secretly wrote names in his memory. He no longer had a pen, but his heart was his paper. He would carve every dead person's name into his heart. Here he met an old man named Daniel. Daniel told him that he too used to read, but his fingers had been cut off when he was caught. He showed Caleb how one could still write without fingers, with lines in the dirt.
This way, to the plants. Okay, let's go. We're a good team.
Fighting broke out between north and south.
You are all to listen carefully
Rumors
to the
reached the
instructions.
plantation that
There will
slaves
be
might
no
be
deviation
freed.
from the orders given.
Some white people left their homes, some went to fight. Mr. Evans also left, and the plantation was left in the care of his wife, Mrs. Evans. Mrs. Evans was a strange woman. She was often ill, and would sit alone frequently. One day she summoned Caleb and said, "You can read, I hear." Caleb nodded. "I have books. It would please me if someone read to me."
Look at that
This was an
sunset, honey.
opportunity
Isn't
for
it
Caleb.
beautiful?
Yeah, Mom,
He would
it's
go
really
to Mrs.
pretty.
Evans'
Just
room
like
at night
you.
and read the Bible to her. In return, she would give him some food, and sometimes old paper. Caleb started writing again. The war intensified. In 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, but the news didn't reach the South, or if it did, the white people hid it. But among the slaves, word spread that the Northern Army was approaching. Daniel said to Caleb, "Son, the time has come. We must run." Caleb asked, "Where will we go?" "North. Where the army is." At night, they would gather secretly and make plans. Caleb drew maps
This way,
based
to the
on what he had
plants.
seen
Okay,
in
let's
Mrs.
go.
Evans' books.
We're a good team. Yeah.
He memorized routes, river names,
You are all to
city
listen
names.
carefully to the instructions.
But one night,
There will be no
Mr. Baker
deviation
saw
from
them.
the orders given.
He came shouting, "What are you people doing?" Daniel pushed Caleb and said, "Run." Caleb ran, but a gunshot rang out behind him. He fell, but got up and kept running. By morning, he was in the forest, alone. Caleb spent days in the forest. He drank river water, ate wild fruit, and slept under trees at night. He was terrified of being recaptured. He
Look at
kept
that
moving
sunset,
north.
honey. Isn't it beautiful?
After many
Yeah,
days,
Mom, it's really
he
pretty.
reached a small
Just
village.
like you.
There he saw black people who were free. They gave him food and told him the Northern Army was nearby. Caleb asked them, "Have you heard the name of my father? Jonah?" They said, "No, son, there are many names." Caleb understood that his father might never be found. But he had his name, and that was enough. When the war ended, Caleb started working with the Northern Army. He was literate, so he got clerical work. He would write the names of dead soldiers, write letters to their families. He realized that keeping a record of death was written in his fate. Years passed. Caleb grew
This
up,
way,
married,
to the
had
plants.
children.
Okay, let's go.
But
We're a
he
good
never
team.
forgot where
Yeah.
he came from. He
You
taught
are
his
all to listen
children
carefully
everything
to
that
the
Mama
instructions.
Hannah had taught him,
There will be
and
no
the stories
deviation
his
from the
mother
orders
used to
given.
tell. In 1890, when he was old, he decided to return to his mother's plantation. He wanted to see what had become of it. The plantation was in ruins. The roof of the house had collapsed, the fields were overgrown with wild grass. The cemetery was still there, but the grave markers had faded. Caleb found the spot where he had buried his papers. He dug up the earth and found a rusted box. He opened the box and inside were decayed scraps of paper. Some names could still be read. Sarah, Sam, Leah, Delia, and hundreds of others. And at the bottom of every page, the same name was written, Caleb. He understood. He had witnessed every death with his own eyes, or heard of it, and on every record, he had written his own name as a witness. The name that had appeared with every death for 30 years was his own. Some years later, a historian researching the history of slavery discovered this box. He looked at the papers and was astonished. The same name appeared again and again on every record, Caleb. He thought perhaps it was a ghost, or a madman who had made himself a witness to every death. The historian researched and found that Caleb was a real person who had escaped slavery and spent his entire life keeping alive the memory of those dead people. His story was never written down because he was just a slave. But in these papers,
Look at that
his presence
sunset,
was
honey.
everywhere.
Isn't it
Today,
beautiful?
those
Yeah,
papers
Mom,
are
it's
kept
really
in a
pretty.
museum.
Just like you.
Tourists look at them, read the names, and move on. They don't know that behind every name was a story, a mother, a father, child who was crying. And they don't know that with all those names, another name is intertwined, a name that will never be erased, Caleb. The boy who laughed in a ray of sunlight, who lost his father, who bid farewell to his mother, who enshrined every death in his heart. The boy who survived, only so that he could keep alive the memory of those who could not survive. And when you look at those papers, remember that these are not just names. These are spirits, looking through Caleb's eyes, and saying to you, we too existed.
This
We
way,
too were
to the
human.
plants.
I end
Okay,
the
let's
hazy
go.
evenings of
We're a
Virginia,
good team.
when the
Yeah.
sun sets and the cotton fields lie desolate.
You are all to listen
Sometimes the
carefully
shadow
to the
of an old man
instructions.
can be seen.
There will be no deviation
He
from the
stands
orders
near
given.
the cemetery, his lips moving faintly, as if speaking a name. And then he vanishes, leaving only a whisper in the wind. Caleb. But does anyone truly hear him? Does anyone truly remember those names? In history books, there are statistics of slavery: how many died, how many survived, how many were sold. But the faces behind those numbers have all faded into mist. Only
Look at that
Caleb's
sunset,
diary
honey. Isn't it
remains, and in
beautiful?
it, the
Yeah,
name
Mom,
that
it's
appeared
really
with every
pretty.
death for
Just
30
like you.
years. The name that proves that someone did care. Someone did remember. And perhaps that is the greatest justice we can give to these lost souls, to speak their names, to remember them, and to never forget that they were human, just like us.